Right. In this class, we'll be beginning with second module, that is about class and objects. The first concept is objects and arrays. First concept is objects and arrays. So when you look at the objects and arrays, so we have studied the details of object. So we know what is an object and we know what is an array. Now we have to study the collaboration of the two, that is objects and arrays. So how we can use objects and arrays together. So that is what is main theme of today's discussion. So when we consider objects and arrays, so the first concept what we need to study is arrays of objects. You know what is an array? Array is collection of elements of same type. And what is an object? Object can hold the data of different types. Object can hold data of different types. So that means now we have to create arrays. Arrays of what? Arrays of objects. This every object is containing individually data of different types. This object contains data of different types. Data of different types. Whereas array contains data of any one type. So in this case, what is array? Array is containing data of different types. That means data of different objects. Where is object contains data of different types. Nothing but like how we have integer array, how we have character array, how we have floating point type of array. Now we are studying about array of objects. Object array. This following code shows how we can create array of when we hash define size as 3. So here we are declaring the keyword called size of to be of size 3. That means it can hold and process a line. So as the recording is started, there will be delay between the audio and video if I power on the video. What I prefer is I need to switch off the video because I have seen some of the recorded videos. So the voice and audio video synchronization is good. For that purpose, what I'll do, I'll keep this off. We can get messages in that quality gets affected. More operations are running on the CPU, and because of less availability of network, we'll face that difficulty. Right? So when you write size as 3, size is a variable which can have, that means size is being defined as a constant. Size is being defined as a constant whose value is 3 always. Whose value is 3 always. Now distance class, we have included that header file here. Like whatever distance class earlier we were discussing till now. For that distance class, we are creating array of objects. D array is the name whose size is 3. So what is size? Size is 3. So that will get distributed here. That means D array of size. So basically what we are doing, we are creating 3 objects. We are creating 3 objects. This is first object. This is second object. After this declaration, what happens? I'm just trying to show it in terms of memory diagrams. Right? This is what is array of objects. So D array of size. This is nothing but D array of 3. So this is what is the first object. D array of 0. This is first object. The second one is D array of 1. D array of 1. Third one is D array of 2. 3 array of 2. So after this first line, 3 array objects will get created, and we know that distance class is containing data members and member functions. Distance class is going to contain data members and member functions. The first data member was, if you remember, I feet. That is feet. The second one was F inches. Similarly, this is I feet, F inches. I feet, F inches. Right? Now these are the local variables A and B. So for loop is being iterated 3 times here, because it starts from 0 and go up to less than size. What is size? Size is say I equal to 0, 1, 2. For these 3 values of I, this for loop will repeat, and this is what is incrementation part. Now within this for loop, for every object we are asking for the detail. That is, enter the feet value and store it in a variable called A. So if you have given a value in this place, if you are given value A as 10, so that will be stored in a variable called A. Now A has the value of 10. Now that 10 we have to store it in this IP value. So what we are calling onto the D array, that is array of objects for the ith index. What is the value of I here? I we have started with 0. D array of 0. So D array of 0 means we are referring to this object. D array of 0 dot set feet of A. So the member function what we have studied in earlier classes. Set feet, what it does, it is going to initialize the value of the feet variable or feet data member present within the object. So set feet, set the value of the feet by passing A as the parameter. What is A? A is 10. That means what happens whenever we invoke this statement, this place we are going to store the value 10. 10 will get occupied. So here 10 will be placed in this location. At this location what happens? 10 will be written. Next we are asking for the inches value, that is enter the inches value, and that will be stored in a variable called B. Say if you have given inches as 5, then again we are calling D array of I. That means onto the 0th object, because it's an array of objects. So onto the 0th object we are invoking set inches function by passing 5 as the parameter. So what this does? This does a value 5 to be copied here. This makes a value 5 to be copied here. Value 5 will be copied. Next, what happens after completion of the for loop? The value of I will get incremented. So earlier value of I was 0, now I becomes 1. So now that means now we are talking about this object. We are processing about the D array of one object. Ask user to enter the feet value. So just like earlier, for the second object also, we are receiving the feet value and the F inches value now. So if you say if you have entered a feet value as say 15 feet, A is 15. Now onto the first object, because value of I is 1, D array of 1, onto this object we are invoking set feet function. We are calling set feet function by passing A as the parameter. What is the value of A now? A is 15. So what this causes? This causes at this location feet value to be set to 15. Feet value to be set to 15. 15 will get stored. Next, asking user to enter the inches value, and that will be stored in the variable B. Say, assume you have given inches value as 7. Inches value as 7. So that will be stored in variable B. Now on to this first object, we are invoking set inches method by passing B as the parameter. What is present in B? B has value 7. That means this causes at this location 7 to be stored. At this location 7 to be stored. Now after the completion of the body of the for loop, what the format says, the incrementation part will execute. That means the modifier part of the for loop will execute. What is the modifier part of the for loop? I plus plus. Now I will be incremented to 2. Check the condition. I is less than 3. Yes, 2 is less than 3. Condition is 2. We will ask user to enter the feet value. So this time if you give feet value as 20, that will be stored in a variable A. Now again call D array of I. That means onto the ith object, what is value of I? I is 2. Onto the second object, because it's an array of objects. Onto this object, we are invoking set feet method by passing 20 as the parameter. So the value of A is 20. What this line causes? This line causes 20 to be written here. That means 20 to be copied to the I feet part of the third object. Next, we ask user to enter the inches value that will be stored in the variable B. Say you have entered inches as 9. Next, we invoke onto the ith object the array of I, the array of 2, set inches method by passing B as the parameter, by passing 9 as the parameter. What this causes? This causes 9 to be written here. This causes 9 to be written here. Now what we have done, after completion of the body of the loop, incrementation part will work. Again I plus plus will execute. Now value of I becomes 3. Check the condition. Once we check 3 is less than 3, this condition is false. Once condition is false, what we do? We come out of the for loop. And this is what we have done. We have read the data for 3 different objects. We have successfully read the data for 3 different objects. And in this case, what we are doing, again we are executing for loop. And onto those array of objects, we are just accessing and displaying the values of feet and inches. That means onto the start from 0, onto the 0th object, dir of 0 dot get feet. That means get the feet value onto this object. That is what is the feet value? 10 is the feet value for the first object. Next, what is the get inches value? Inches value is 5. Then end is there. Cursor will go to the next line. Cursor will go to the next line. So what is the feet value in the second object? 15. Inches value in the second object? 7. Again cursor will go to the next line. What is the feet value in the third object? 20. Inches value in the third object? 9. And we will come out of the for loop. In this particular example, they have given some other input. 1.1, 2, 2.2, 3, 3.3 they have given. But what I have considered some other input. This is how we can still process and use array of objects within our classes. Now another concept here is very similar to the normal data members. We can also have array data members within our class. That means like how you can have integer variable within the class, we can also have an array variable within the class. So this program is going to demonstrate that. What we are doing here is IArray is an array variable which is being declared within the class and its size is 3. And its size is 3. And its size is 3. And these are other normal member functions as well. That means we can use and process integer arrays within the class. Integer arrays within the class. Say for example, the set element method is being defined, which is belonging to class A. See here, class A has 2 methods, set element and get element. Now while writing the definition of the set element, that means we are trying to initialize some index location. Here, this diagrammatically I will try to show. IArray of integer array. How many locations are there? Its size is 3. 0, 1, 2. Size is 3. 0, 1, 2. That means for any of these locations, either we can initialize the values or we can retrieve the value. So that's what whatever location you whatever value is specified in the V variable and whatever position you specify. P indicates the position. If the position is greater than size, we cannot initialize the value, because at any given point of time we can write the values either in the 0th index or first index or second index. Now say assume if you have given value of P as 2 and value of V as 20. If you have called the function by passing these 2 parameters, P as 2 and V as 10, it will check this condition. Is P is greater than or equal to size? No, false. That means it is a valid index. If it is a valid index, then we try to put the value in that location. What is that? IArray of P. What is P? P is 2. IArray of 2. That means at this location, what I want to write? I want to write V. What is present in V? In V we have 10. This is how it gets initialized. Similarly, this is for reading the array, this method. So what it demonstrates, like similar to the normal variables within the array, we can also have the array variables within the classes. Coming to the next concept of namespaces. So in the very first module, in the beginning, we have studied about the namespaces. So what basically namespace is used? Namespace is used to write our own code in our libraries. The user is free to create their own library by using the namespaces. And basically namespaces, they will prevent the pollution of global namespace that leads to the name clashes. So what is the global namespace? Global namespace is the namespace which is by default library where everyone can write their code. And if what is the name clash? What is the name clash? So we will discuss this shortly now. What is the name clash? Name clash will occur when two users are using the same name for the class. When two users are using the same name for the class, so then we'll encounter the name clashes. So this example will demonstrate how actually the name clash will occur. Say for example, class A we have and another one is class A. Suppose a class with the same name is I defined in two header files. So a1.h is one header file, a2.h is another header file. a1.h is one header file and a2.h is another header file. Now within this header file, class A is defined. Within this header file, class A is defined. If you can see here, A and A, two header files are having the same class, same name for the classes. Two header files are having same name for the classes. This is the class A is present within header file A1. Class A is present within header file A2. Both the header files are having same classes. Now in the program somewhere we are trying to include header file a1.h as well as header file a2.h. Header file a1.h as well as a2.h. See here, this is a1.h and this is a2.h. a1.h has class A, a2.h has class A. Now when you include both of these are being included. Both of these are being included in our program. This is what is our program. Now what happens? There will be two copies of A now. One copy which is present in the a1.h, one copy which is present in the a2.h. That means now there are two A's in our program. This is our code. This is our code. That means this is our source file what we are trying to write. In this scenario, if you try to declare the objects of class A, what is this? This is one class A. This is one class A. This class is belonging to a1.h. This is belonging to a2.h. But when you declare the object, there will be an ambiguity due to multiple definitions of A. The compiler will not understand. That means which class it has to consider because there are two classes with the same name. This is called as name clash or collision or ambiguity. So because they are present within the globally declared class and they are present, though they are present in two independent header files, but names are same. Right? We cannot prevent that. This error cannot be prevented because it is possible that whenever you use the header files, you will not worry about what is happening in those header files. What are the names of classes in those header files? Simply programmer will use that code. Now, what could be the solution for that? What we can do here is we can go for using namespace for that. That is, you keep the a1.h header file in the namespace called a1. And within that namespace write the class definition. Within the namespace write the class definition. That means this is what we do. We call it as name space, not name they have given, namespace A1. Similarly, this one will be kept within namespace A2. Now there are two different namespaces we have kept. We are going to define our own namespace and we are going to write our header files and classes in that name file. So here namespace A1, write class A within that. Next, namespace A2, write class A within that. Now the two definitions of the classes are present in two different namespaces. Two definitions are present in two different namespaces. Here namespace A1 has class A. I'll try to show it diagrammatically here. This is namespace A1. This is namespace A2. Namespace A1 and namespace A2. And we know that those namespaces are having class A and class A. Names of the classes are same now. This namespace is having class A and this is also having class A. Names of those classes are same. Now, how do we declare once we have included namespaces? While declaring objects, what you have to do is you have to consider the name of the namespace which you are trying to include. That means in your program, if you are including them in your program, this is your program. If you are trying to include them in your program, what you do, make use of the A1 namespace. That means what this indicates here is we are declaring an object of class A which is belonging to namespace A1. We are declaring an object AOBJ2 which is belonging to class A belonging to namespace A2. That means here this will indicate like A1 scope resolution. There are independently clearly we are telling that this A is belonging to this namespace. This A is belonging to another namespace. Clearly we are telling because we are referring, this is one more usage of scope resolution operator. What we are telling, this A, this declaration, what it tells to the compiler here is now the name clash will be resolved. If you write only A obj without this scope resolution operator, then there will be conflict like how we have seen in the previous case here. I'll show that case one again. See here. We are simply writing A class, name of the class and name of the object. Name of the class and name of the object. In this case, what happens? There will be confusion like which class it has to consider, whether the class present in namespace A1 or the class present in namespace A2. Now that is being resolved. How? We are clearly telling that this is the class which is belonging to namespace A1. This is the class which is belonging to namespace A2. This is how we can resolve the namespace collision. Now every time, assume if there are two classes, every time qualifying the name of the class with namespace can be troublesome for you. It can be time consuming process. What we can do, instead of that, we can also use the using directive. How it helps? So the same example is being modified. Using namespace A1. So what it indicates? By default, the namespace being assumed is A1. How many namespaces we have here? A1 and A2 are the two names. When you are using A1, that means by default we are including this, including all the classes from this namespace. If you want to include something from this namespace, then as well we have to do. This is the first technique. What it says, by default this A is belonging to A1. That means it is very similar to writing like this, A1 scope resolution A. But we need not write that. The other thing here is, for other classes, if for the first A1 we need not write this. For other A2 you have to write it exclusively. So it's going to reduce some burden. But this problem will again repeat when there are more than one namespaces, more than two namespaces which you are trying to include. Still there is some issue with this. Now another concept about namespaces here is we may have very long names for our namespaces because everybody wants to use their own names. And to remember that, you may want to give the namespace like this. That is your first name, middle name, and the last name, and your college name, department name, whatever. If your namespace is containing some 100 characters, if your namespace is containing some 100 characters or very long name, so there is a provision to write short form for that. Here, if your namespace is very long, every time you have to use that very long name, co-resolution operator, name of the class, and then name of the object. This program will be there if the namespace is very long. What we can do here is we can do aliasing and give smaller names for that. Give smaller names for that, for those namespace. How we can do that? Here, this is how we are doing. Namespace X is equal to a very long name. That means we are declaring an alias. The very long name is being assumed as X. Instead of writing very long name, what you can write here is you can write X scope resolution A1. So that will be sufficient. So these were the concepts about namespaces. Now the nested classes, as the name itself says, the nested class, a class which is present within another class is called as a nested class. Or if we define one class inside another class, defining one class inside another class is called as nesting of classes, and such a class is known as a nested class. Such a class is known as a nested class. This is nested class, and the class which contains the nested class is called as a enclosing class. Outer class is enclosing class, inner class is nested class. Now, how we can define the nested classes? Class B is defined in the private section of class A. For example, in this scenario, what we are doing is we are defining one class within another class. We are trying to define one class within another class. So class B is the one which is being defined within the private section of class A, because we know that by default members of a class are private, and by default members of a structure are public. Now by default this is present within the private section of the class A. Class B is present within class A. Now here class A is called as enclosing class. Class A is called as enclosing class, and class B is called as nested class. Class B is called as nested class. Now, instead of private, if you want to define class B within the public section, so that is also possible. See, here we have written the public keyword for defining class B. Now, what happens, instead of private, class B is part of public section of class A. Public section of class A. Now, let us see one example. The presence of here, the size of the enclosing class is not affected by the presence of the nested class. That means outer class enclosing class, inner class is nested class. So the size of the enclosing class, outer class, will not either increase or decrease by the presence of the nested class. Not either increase or decrease by the presence of the nested class. Because the memory for the nested class will get allocated only when you declare the objects. We know that memory for the class will get allocated only when you declare the objects of the class. Just by the presence, it will not increase the size of the enclosing class. Here you can see class B is being nested within class A. Class B is being nested within class A, and class A has one integer variable. Let us say it takes 4 bytes. And class B has one more integer variable. Let us say it takes 4 bytes. Now by default, we may feel that 4 plus 4 equal to 8 bytes. Right? The data contained by class A is 8 bytes. No, that is not the fact. What happens here is the size of integer. If you take display size of integer, it is 4. And if you try to display the size of class A, that means size of this whole class is only 4 bytes. That means size taken by only the data members of enclosing class only the data member X. It will not consider size of the nested class. It will not include the size of the data members of the nested class. So both are coming 4 only. So you can see the output. Size of integer is also 4 and size of class A is also 4. So these were some of the functionalities about. Okay, one more concept about the nested classes. How do we access, how do we define the member functions of the nested class? That is very important. How do you define member functions of the nested class? Because we know the member function of a class are defined by using name of the class, using scope resolution operator, and using name of the function. This is how we define member functions of a normal class. But for the nested class, we have to take the help of one more hierarchy with the help of scope resolution operator. With the help of scope resolution operator. So let us see this example here. What example says? Class B is being defined within class A, and class B has a method called bTest. Class B has a method called bTest. Now I want to define the method bTest outside the class. bTest outside the class. How do we declare? bTest is being defined, which is part of the class B, which is enclosed within class A. So here we are going to use scope resolution operator in 2 hierarchies. That is, bTest is the member function which is present within class B, which is present within class A. How do you define bTest scope resolution B, scope resolution A? If there is one more nesting, then we go for using scope resolution hierarchy once again. So the same way we can access the data members also. Compared to normal members, we use scope resolution operator 2 times. We use scope resolution operator 2 times. Right? 1 second. Let me. Right. What we have completed here is objects and arrays, namespaces, and nested classes. Next, we have the concept of constructors and destructors. So this I'll take it in the next class. Preferably I can take it in the next class, but still, because it needs some time.